Hi there, I'm Scotty Deluxe, but on this channel you can call me Quetch. Here we talk about all things current Final Fantasy XI. Today we're going to be talking about what types of items an endgame player keeps in their inventory. Now, not everybody's inventory is going to be the same, but I'm going to talk you through all the different things that I keep on me that I use on a daily or weekly basis. So if that sounds interesting to you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for future content. For starters, I have the category that I call meds. Now, my inventory is actually going to be sorted a little bit differently than I would normally keep it, just to make it easy to present to you what I'm using these items for, but we're going to start here with the medications. So, first of all, Panacea. This item is especially important if you're doing anything involving Odyssey, NM-wise, especially as a tank. So, a lot of times you'll get multiple status effects at any moment, and there are some things like defense down that comes from N-Guy, the Shark Odyssey NM, that you really just need that off as soon as possible, and sometimes the White Mage may remove one of the status effects on you, but not the other. So in general, a lot of times I am hitting my macro for this item really often against bosses, especially when we're trying to get V20 clears. And I find this to be one of the more important medications to keep on you. It's also 20k a pop. Sometimes I hit them a little too much maybe, and they're a little expensive, but super important for getting rid of nasty status effects and helping out your white mages. Next up, antacids. So I change food a lot, probably more often than the average player. Leave a comment down below if you're a fan of the antacid, because what I find is that if I'm having accuracy issues and I put on, say, an attack food, antacid, what it does is it removes the current food that you have on you off, and then you can put on a new food. So if I'm having accuracy issues and I have attack food on, I'll swap that out. Generally, I know what fight I'm going into and whether I need more accuracy or attack or defensive stats. But sometimes, especially on the fly, things may change, buffs may change. I always keep antacids on me. They're super important. Next up, holy waters. These next two, actually, Holy Water and Remedy, are the other Help Your White Mage items. Now, Doom, it doesn't have a incredibly high success rate when it's being AoE cast, like if your White Mage has Yag Rush. So, Holy Water, when I get doomed, I'll just start hitting them. I'll just start chugging them. So that usually happens. I mean, you usually know the content you're going into that Doom can be a thing, but it happens enough in random content that I always keep them on me, and say I chug 4 to get Doom off. Next time that happens, maybe a few weeks later, and usually I'll restock the Holy Waters in between, random things. Here at the Curio Vendor Moogle, by the way, super good place to get some of these items. And it's just good to have them, good to use them, help your White Mage out, and will save you from insta-death. Next up, Remedy. So Remedy is for paralysis, silence, blindness, poison, and disease. Obviously, silence in a pinch if you don't have echo drops on you. Speaking of which, I need to restock my echo drops, just realized that, but that's another item I definitely have on me at all times. But especially paralysis and blindness. If you need those things off and White Mage is preoccupied, remedies are super good to have on you. And the other good thing about these is you get them from doing Ambuscade, so you kind of can always have a stack, no problem. They're not that expensive, not quite Panacea level, but I use them less than the Panacea, right? Because those are the harder effects to remove. So anyway, especially for paralysis, if I'm just eating Paraprox, I'll spam some remedies until it finally takes it off. Next up, I wouldn't normally carry these, like if you would have asked me a couple months ago, Prism Powder and Silent Oil, but the reason these are in my inventory is because of sortie. So if I'm going a job that doesn't have, say, Ninja Sub or Dancer Sub, there are times where you need to have Sneak and Invis on, and you can't rely on the White Mage to have done it because of, say, maybe your party splits up a little bit in sortie. So these are kind of a new addition to my inventory, but are very important, and I often check my inventory to make sure I'm stocked on these when I'm doing sortie because I don't want to be caught without them. Next up, Re-Raiser and High Re-Raiser. Now, there's actually a number of reasons for these. So if you're somebody who's still doing like Dyna Wave 3, I've taken a break from it recently, but if you want these for in case Odin pops during the Wave 3 boss, and that's where I got into the habit of keeping a Re-Raiser and a High Re-Raiser on me. And then Odyssey NMs happen. Having a re-raise on yourself when things start to go south and not relying on, maybe the White Mage to have it up. If you're like timing out NMs to just earn a little RP, it helps to have a re-raiser up. Again, in case things go south quickly, you're going through multiple NMs, maybe the White Mage didn't get re-raise up in time. Next up, Vile Elixir. Another relatively new addition, and these are probably one of the things that I'm going to talk about today that maybe isn't completely necessary for me to have in my actual inventory at all times, but they restore MP and they don't give you medicated status. So, but they're also rare, so you can only hold one of each. Now, what we do with these as a tank, as a rune fencer, I sometimes need to use them to restore MP in the middle of like V20 NMs in Odyssey. But also, yeah, you can bazaar them. You put them in your bazaar for 1 gil during your run, and if the white mage gets low on MP, that can lead to a wipe. And so we'll put them in our bazaars for 1 gil. The white mage will go into somebody's bazaar and buy it if they've already used theirs up and they need that MP. Very important for that, but that's really only when you're doing V20 NMs. So again, this is probably something I could just remove. Next up is the food category. Grape Dafuku had this added effect of having accuracy and attack added to it maybe a year ago now, and it's become my like bread and butter, like just put this food on if I'm going into anything. You can buy them here at the Curio Vendor Moogle, and it's just accuracy and attack, especially, you know, mid-game content where like maybe you don't even have proper buffs. It just covers up accuracy and attack issues that you may have. Next up is a food that's a little bit more specialized, and that is the soy ramen. So soy ramen is attack plus 10% or 11% on the HQ, up to max of 175, but also strength and HP are important. As generally I use these more on warrior, but honestly, they're my attack food. If I know that I'm accuracy capped, I will use a soy ramen in order to help make sure I'm attack capped. In the age of having PDL on your gear, you want to have the extra attack. I mean, you've always wanted the extra attack. You've always wanted to reach your maximum damage from your hits and your weapon skills. But it's even more important to be at that attack cap, especially in something like Odyssey segment farming. If you're like the main DPS, you want to be toggling into your PDL sets. This may be something that's a little bit more foreign to you if you haven't played the game recently or you don't know, but essentially, physical damage limit increases your amount of damage you can do, but it still requires you to have that much more attack in order to get that bonus. So it doesn't increase your damage unless your attack is also at cap. And so I've been carrying this attack food. It's my preferred attack food. And this is often why I say I'll use antacids, because if I notice my accuracy is good, I may antacid off my Daifuku and throw on a soy ramen. I also keep the +1 because that 5 extra attack is all the more attack. Especially if you're main DPS, soy ramen is a great option. Next up are the other 2 ramens that I keep on me, miso and salt. They may look very similar. HP, well, actually there's HP on the miso, but not on the salt. The miso has defense and magic evasion, while the salt has evasion and accuracy. Okay, so I'll start with the salt ramen because it's not the one that's immediately obvious what I might use this for. This I'll use in an evasion tanking build on Rune Fencer. Basically, if I'm tanking in as Rune Fencer in Odyssey, I want the salt ramen for the extra evasion and the extra accuracy. When I'm on Rune, I try to add extra DPS because it's got that as an option. I like using Dimidiation. I made an EPO, I'm gonna use it. I mean, obviously, you know, you want to worry about tanking more than DPSing, but takes care of any accuracy issues that I might have on Rune, adds a little dex, and that evasion helps you evasion tank the mobs in Odyssey segment farm. Now, miso ramen is just, it's the defense food I use when I'm actually genuinely just tanking things. I'm not worried about having accuracy. I'm just making sure that the mob focuses on me and I take care of what I have to do. HP plus 100, defense up to 170, Meva of 50, MDB magic defense bonus of 5. All super solid all around. It's a little expensive, so is the soy ramen +1, but we're talking real endgame here, and you need to know what these foods are providing you, and you need to use them when they're appropriate. Next up in the food section is my accuracy food, so that's just Sublime Sushi. It's too easy for me, especially as a person who plays a lot of Dagger DD. Sublime Sushi is Dex 7 and accuracy up to 100, or accuracy up to 105 if you're using the HQ. Whether I use NQ or HQ, both for the soy ramen and for the Sublime Sushi, is generally the length of content I'm doing or the risk of death. If I think I'm going to be dying, I'll just use NQ. Something like Sort Tea is really good for just popping a +1 food the moment you get in, because generally you're not dying in the Sort Tea that's available to us now, which is the initial floor of sortie. So a +1 food generally lasts the whole run. You just pick, depending upon your buffs or what job you're on, whether you want the sushi or the soy ramen, and just rock the +1 for the entire run. Basically a staple food that any endgame player should have in their inventory. Next up, omelet sandwich. For similar reasons, it's your accuracy food. It's actually, this is I should say miso ramen versus omelet sandwich is a valid choice to make. Miso ramen, let me take back what I said before about miso ramen, because omelet sandwich is fantastic. Enmity +4 in addition to defense 11%, accuracy 11%, HP 11%. Vitality and mind, of course, are also good. Better than miso in terms of HP. It's got a lower max defense, so you get more defense out of miso. You get Meva and MDB out of miso, but on omelet sandwich, you get enmity 4 and accuracy 11. Again, that's on Rune Fencer. I love this food. I bet if I played more Paladin, I'd probably be using it a lot too. Extra enmity is always welcome. And the accuracy, depending upon what content you're doing. If I'm doing content sort of in between, right? So on Rune, I'll use a salt ramen for evasion tanking. I'll use a miso ramen for especially anything that involves magic damage. But in between there, that's where the omelet sandwich lies, and that's probably where the most of the things that I'm doing on Rune Fencer are anyway. Last food I have is just something that's in my inventory for right now. This food released in the last patch. It's got enmity -6, DA 6, WSD 6. That's for the HQ. The NQ has 5, 5, and 5. I haven't actually tried this on anything yet. A buddy of mine bought some, and I was just like, hey, let me get one just in case I want to use it and try it out. If I didn't say my piece on this food in the last update video, I'll say something quickly here. It's basically best for soul voice situation, which is oftentimes your V20 fights in Odyssey, Wave 3 boss in Dynamis, Warder of Courage even, going back to Aeonic content, or any of the helms. As long as you're getting soul voice and you know your buffs are good, this is gonna be the food to use compared to something like sushi or daifuku or soy ramen. You just don't need the things those offer. Other than the stats, you are losing like some strength or some dex for your respective jobs, but the DA6 and WSD6, I mean, it's all excellent in a soul voice situation. Next category is consumables. Aside from the obvious consumables of medicine and food, we have arrows and bolts. For the rare times, I'm actually playing ranger and shooting things. Yeah, can't say I do that much anymore. True flight, amazing for especially wave 3 if you happen to be the one ranger in the alliance that's super buffed for those. Yeah, I keep them because I play ranger sometimes, and you never want to be caught without arrows. Similarly, bullets, and I'll just say some people do keep these things in their Mog wardrobe. I'm always checking my inventory to see if I'm stocked on things, so I prefer to keep my arrows and bullets in my inventory, and then I can see as their numbers are dwindling. The two important bullets, Chrono Bullet for physical weapon skills and ranged attacks. You can also argue for Devastating Bullet, which has a slightly higher ranged accuracy. And then Living Bullet for your magical weapon skills on Corsair. Not much to explain here. I play a lot of Core, and you need to have bullets. Next up is another thing that's not going to be obvious to everyone, and that is the Uchitake. So this allows you to cast the Fire Ninjutsu spell. In Sortie, there's an objective in the D path. Well, you need to Magic Burst a mob in order to do the objective. And I will, on Corsair especially, I will do Savage Blade into Last Stand for a light skill chain, and then I will burst it myself with Katon. So that's the fire spell. So I make a light skill chain, burst it with a fire spell. Using this method, if there's, say, 2 other people in the group, say the Bard could do something similar, or say you have a ninja, say you have a Dragoon/White Mage, you want to be solo skill chaining and bursting to get that objective as quick as you can, and the more people in the group that can do that, it relieves the White Mage from having to be paying attention to many mobs at once. They can just focus on healing. Super handy for hitting that objective fast, and Sortie is all about hitting your objectives fast. The more efficient you can do that, the better runs you're going to have. Next up is one item that I get a little bit of contention. There's 2 items in my inventory that are a little contentious. This is one of them, and I'll just say my thief macro, my pulling macro on thief has been a dart for as long as I can remember. People tell me to just get a boomerang, and I say I'll remember to do that one day, and I never do. So my stock of 99 darts has probably lasted 4 or 5 months for the amount of pulling I end up having to actually do on thief, which isn't much. Next, Shihei, trump card. Don't really need much explanation. I do a lot of various things with Nin Sub, and especially in Sortie. I will make a quick comment about this. In Sortie, as Corsair, and because of the way you fight random groupings of mobs, sometimes you're either tanking an individual mob, or say you get to an NM in sortie and you get there first and you crack a Savage Blade, like if it's, depending upon who else is hitting the mob, say it's the Bard, you're actually going to be the one pulling that mob's aggro, and you just want to have shadows up, like especially against the DNM, the Demisang Deleterious. You want to keep up your shadows because they can do nasty things and one-shot you with weapon skills and stuff. So that's the only thing I have to say about that. Nin sub has been especially good lately in sortie. Next up, trump cards for Corsair, Quick Draw, etc. Super important. Don't get caught without these. You're going to get into content that needs to be dispelled or put to sleep. Whatever. Trump cards, gotta have them. So that's it for all of my consumable items I keep in my inventory. Now let's move on to the next category, which I'm calling RP. All these items you see beneath the trump card and the link shell, you need to trade this item to something in order to receive your RP onto it. In the case of a Chronica, Bunzee's Rod, hello. In the case of a Chronica, Bunzee's Rod, Gleddy's, Sakpada, and Sheer, those things are all pertaining to Odyssey. You get RP from doing the NMs, and you trade it to the Moogle outside of the Conflux and Rabao, and that's how you put RP onto them. Basically, anything that I'm currently upgrading that needs to be traded to gain RP on, I keep in my inventory just so I don't have to go fish it out of a Mog Wardrobe. Plus, it saves my Mog Wardrobe a couple slots. When one of these things maxes out, I'll go find an appropriate wardrobe to put it into, and sometimes there's not actually any room in the wardrobes, and I gotta make room, so either way, it saves me a couple slots to kind of figure out what to do with later on once the item is finished. We know we're getting a new tier of these eventually, but anyway, that's the Odyssey stuff. The only other thing in my inventory is this Agoji Chopper. Now, this you have to trade along with Heroism Crystals. I'm not bringing this as a main weapon on my Warrior. Normally, your Dynamis items you would equip and gain RP during Dynamis, but I'm not equipping this on my Warrior and going into Dyna and expecting to be a DPS. I am simply upgrading it because there's a subtle blow build that you can do with it. So I've been dumping all the random extra heroism I've been getting in case I ever need the max subtle blow build on Warrior with a Great Axe. I probably won't, but it's an easy to make utility item. I think I paid a few million for it. Next up, this is a link shell. I lead a link shell in Bahamut, the server. Gotta have that. Next up, these are, what do I call these? Randoms, no. Odyssey, yes. So these items specifically pertain to activities within Odyssey. Moogle amplifiers are used to increase your bonus RP return from an Odyssey NM. Don't go into an Odyssey NM run and not bring these if you're wanting RP. I always make sure there's at least 5 in my inventory. Next up, lusterless wing boxes. If you do a lot of Odyssey C, Shale C segment farming, you can sell the wings. They sell very slowly. You can NPC the wings. They NPC for an okay amount of gil. In general, I'm just holding on to them in case they ever get a second use. If I ever get way too many boxes, I'll probably just NPC a bunch of the wings. Next up, Headache Scale, Sovereign's Hide, Tumult's Blood, and Sarama's Hide. So I pop the NMs in our Odyssey segment farm runs. The NMs on the first 3 floors cost 1 pop item in order to pop, while the 4th floor costs, I think I'm down to 4 per pop. So that's the reason why there's so many more Headache Scales than there are of these other items. The first NM pop we see, I'll do Tumult. The second one, Sovereign. The third one, Sarama. So that was Odyssey. Next up, we have what I'm calling the randoms, or Kaznarian Sapphire. So these are currently only used for one thing, and that is to upgrade your Empyrean armor from +1 to +2. I personally, a little bit of tinfoil hat here, I expect these to be used in some sort of upgrade process for the prime weapons in the future, but we currently have no information on that. Next up, silver vouchers, copper vouchers, Abdallah seals, all this stuff. So silver vouchers are basically you gain a handful of them every month, use them for Aman Trove. Enough of them randomly fall into my inventory because when you set your ROEs, it's some stuff like do Ambu, do Dynamis, that if I were to shove them out in my inventory, go trade them to the NPC every time I had one, it would be tedious. So I'll just keep them in my inventory for the month. When I actually go to do my orbs with my different characters, I'll toss them all onto the NPC, and then next month I'll just slowly start acquiring more. Similarly, for the copper vouchers, you're given them from so much random content that once they hit 99, I'll go turn in that stack to the NPC that holds them for you. But in the meantime, what's the sense in dumping them? You're just going to have them in your inventory anyway. Next up is Abdallah seals. Some people may be a little bit jealous of the amount I have, but there was a number of weeks, lots of weeks, where I skipped out on Ambu, but I still did the weekly seals and stuff, so I got ahead on seals, and it just kept happening. Next up, and we're almost to the end, Maze Tabula R01. This is used to reset your entire party's 2-hour abilities. Always, you want a couple of people who have these if you're doing any kind of Odyssey, especially during when Odyssey was kind of at its peak grind. I always made sure this was fresh, was always using it. Super important to have. Moving on. Warp Cudgel. Second other contentious item in my inventory. I find that Warp Ring doesn't always do what you need it to do. So sometimes it's on cooldown. I keep a Warp Cudgel in my inventory at all times. Not in a Mog wardrobe. Not in a Mog case. I keep it in my inventory because sometimes your ring is on cooldown and you need to warp out of there. Lastly, and very simply, Kindred's Metals and Beastman's Metals. This category I'm going to call sellables. There's not much to the category, but generally this is where I'll keep things in my inventory that say I've gotten from Ambu. Say I've gotten a bunch of Alexandrite. There may be 6 to 10 stacks of Alex in my inventory at any given point because my auction house slots are full and I don't feel like muling. So that's going to do it for what types of new challenge. That's going to do it for what types of items an endgame player keeps in their inventory. If I've missed anything, tell me about it in the comments down below. Let me know what you keep in your inventory. Let me know which of these things you definitely do not. I'm at 52 out of 80, and generally that extra 30 slots is my kind of operating inventory. I find that these items are all important, and I've made my case as to why you should keep them in your direct inventory. But anyway, remember to like the video, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.